Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Danny, Windir, Martyrium. Martyrium. My favorite Windir song. I look forward to it, and thank you. Now, if I remember correctly, this is going to be some black metal stuff, correct? We've listened to Windir before. Let's dive into it. See what they're bringing to the table today. So it shifted over to a triplet pulse on the drums. Really interesting. It's almost disruptive to the original flow. It sounds great here, but coming off of the 4/4 at the beginning that was a rough transition. Almost choir-esque themes. The two guitars on the sides. Yeah. Oh, dude. So a bit more straightforward of a section here. Interesting instrument choice here for our center channel. fade out on the simplest part of the track, just to keep that energy driving forward until the end. Yeah. Very cool. Of course, this has the foundation of black metal. The harshes are, yeah, they kind of have that. I mean, it's not the higher pitched black metal stuff, but as far as growls go, it's not really guttural. It's got a little bit more clarity to it, more of a nasally sound. Definitely something that I would expect of a black metal vocalist. The two main guitars that we hear through the entirety of the track are just constant picking. There's not a lot of rhythmic change in there. We do have a couple occasionally variations in the accent pattern in order to create the illusion of syncopation and adjusting cadence. But for the most part, I mean, it's just constant all the way through. And the drums. These also are more black metal adjacent, with especially the bass kick being as constant as it is through a lot of this, and the snare giving us a very consistent and rigid attack pattern throughout every single section here, regardless of what the bass kicks are doing. And we'll touch on that in a second. So between the guitars and the drums and the vocal style, through majority of this, it is very clearly a black metal foundation. But there's a few ways that they deviate from this and go into very interesting directions. The first is rhythmic. The drums are weird. I don't know any other way to say that. The drum work consistently changes to different rhythmic pulses. We have quarter notes in here, we have eighth notes, we have 16th notes, and we have triplets, triplet quarter notes, actually triplet eighth notes. And it always happens in a very jagged manner. There's no clean introduction to it. There's no, let's inject some triplets into our drum fill so when we come into the next bar, when we hit that repetition, or when we go into a new section, that we'll have already slightly introduced this new feeling. It just happens. And it's usually on the bass kick. The snare accent is very consistent throughout this. And it's always a time feel change. The time signature is 4/4 throughout this entire song. It's just that the pulse underneath that 4/4 changes. And it's all down to the bass kick. The guitars don't replicate that. The snare is consistent in its attacks. The vocalist doesn't seem to change up much of their rhythmic flow. The drummer just likes to shift things up every now and then. And it's really jarring. There's ways to smooth that out. I'm sure the drummer knows of them. I'm sure this was a purposeful decision to have these really jarring moments. I can't say I was a fan of them, but I do think it's neat to hear rhythmic switch-ups. I especially think it's neat to hear some more triplets in black metal. You know, if you're gonna just keep playing one time feel of notes, like just eighth notes, just 16th notes for a minute at a time, yeah, change that up, man. Give me some quarter notes, throw some triplets in there, hang on to it, hold that rhythm out for the entirety of the section, but at least make it different from the section prior. We've listened to a lot of black metal that's just, 6, 7, 10, 15 minutes of 16th notes. And that gets a little boring for me, even if harmonically it's more interesting. Rhythmically, you're losing me. And I'll say, I will take this over just static 16th notes all the time, even though I find the transitions between the rhythms very jarring and always pulled me out of the listening experience. Now, the other way that this song is a bit different from my expectations of black metal is, it's pretty pretty apparent. I think you heard it too. There's choir vocals in here. We've heard black metal tracks that shift between harsh vocals and clean. We have heard harshes and cleans layered. We've heard even clean harmony in black metal. I don't think I've heard anything quite like this, where there is so much reverb and clarity to tone that it feels like there's a choir here. Now, honestly, listening to it, I'd say there's maybe 2 or 3 tracks at max. Maybe there is a choir and it's just produced in a way that doesn't sound like there is one, but my gut says that it's probably a few tracks. I think it's 2 or 3, maybe 4 tops, and then production tricks to widen it out. But what I really like about it is, while I do occasionally hear a clear, present pitch, something that I would say, this is obviously a lead vocal, and then everything else is a choir that supports it, more of a texture. It does come across as a wide swath of vocals all singing simultaneously, and they form together into a wall. I don't know that we've ever brought this up in discussion, but there's a very big difference between, say, I don't know, you go watch like a boy band or like a 5-piece pop set or something, and everybody's singing with each other and harmonizing, but you can like still make out every unique voice in there. In the production, all their timbres is equally weighted in a way that allows all of them to be emphasized within the mix, but still come together as the chord that they're singing. But choir music, to me, is really all about the blending of the voices, and a lot of this is about clarity of tone. You really need to have almost perfect pitch and almost a minimal amount of character to your tone as you deliver it. I have no data to back this up, but I think this is one of the reasons why choirs always sound alike. Like, even if you have 30-piece choir and a 30-piece choir, and they're 2 completely different groups of people, they're still going to sound similar. You don't get as much of the unique timbres and characters and colorings of each individual person, because the point is to blend it all into that choir sound. And that's what we get here underneath that main vocal that just pokes out a little bit in the middle of it. It's a really interesting decision here, but I think it works. I'm not sure how to interpret it, but I do like the way it sounds, especially against all of the blackened noise here, the constant attacks from all of the instruments, and then you have these long legato held out notes. It works in sort of a strange way. I think part of that is the contrast of the two, but they're not clashing. They support each other by being different. But the other part of this that stands out is when the guitars aren't just playing metal chords. We don't just have these 2 dyads. They are consistent throughout the entire track. Just each guitar plays its note. You get this cool dyad out of it. We even had a little bit of some cool harmonic movement at the beginning of the track in that very first riff. That's explored a little bit more throughout the track, but I find that more often than not, the more interesting guitar parts come from the extra guitars. You see, there's 2 other guitars that pop up here, and occasionally a center guitar. And they are playing Baroque music on top of this metal. And I find this really interesting, but also not at all surprising, given that we just have a dyad here in the 2 main guitars, in our 2 rhythm guitars. A dyad is 2 notes. A chord is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you want to, start getting into the more complex realms of chordal writing. So if you only have 2, and you could have 7, you have a lot of room to grow. And that's where the Baroque fits in, and I think it's why Baroque works really well with metal, because a lot of metal is 2-chord composition. It's the power chord. Your root, your fifth, and your octave, and your root and the octave are the same note, just 1 octave higher. So you really only have 2 notes. You have basically empty chords. They have bite to them, sure, but they don't really have character yet. which is why metal music works well for pop, because you fill in that area with brighter tones or happier tones or more joyous tones. It works with adding classical to it, because you can fill that empty space with more classical notes and create a completely different set of chords. Metal is very malleable because of this almost blank slate progression writing in a vast majority of metal. I mean, the power chord is synonymous with metal, yeah. So classical is always going to work really well with it, as is pretty much anything. But yeah, dude, it sounds so good here too. And Baroque just has that bite. It has the vibe, it has the energy, it has the personality, I think, to really work with metal's aesthetic. And I think that's why Baroque gets used in metal more so than, romantic or even modern, I would say, is used quite a bit less than Baroque is in metal. And Baroque music just has that edge to it that works well with this. But what I like too is it's not just a harmonic idea. We're not just playing riffs, but using the chords of classical music. We have classical composition in here. One of the things that stood out to me right from the start is the right guitar kicked off first, and then after a bar, the left guitar came in. And the left guitar played the exact same first bar that the right guitar did, but one bar behind. So I was like, oh, cool, we have a canon here. But we didn't. A canon is when two or more instruments play the exact same thing, but separated by time. If you've ever sung Row, Row, Row Your Boat or Frere Jacques, and that pronunciation is probably terrible, bear with me, my French is horrible. But one person will start singing, and when they get to the second sentence, someone will start on the first sentence. And when they both move a third person will come back in on the first sentence. There's always one sentence displaced. That's a canon, sometimes referred to as a round. I thought that's what we were getting here. It's a very classic technique, but it's not. We actually got a motif. We kicked off this idea with a repeated phrase, or a phrase that would be repeated later on multiple times. This motif shows up all throughout this track. We hear it start off ideas, we hear ideas move back into it to bring it back up later. We've heard ideas end with it, but both guitars end up going in their own directions with this. They also have variations on it where they will take this motif and move all of the notes up one step each or two steps each or something, creating a variation on the idea. Sometimes there'll be a rhythmic variation within it. This is awesome. There's counterpoint in here. There's a slight introduction of a canon that leads into theme and variation. There's leitmotif throughout this. Like it's just so cool. And just listening to these guitars just weave in and around each other, separating in ideas, doing two completely different things and coming together to line up on one bar, to separate again, and then displace themselves, or one instrument does an idea and then it gets repeated over here. Like there is so much intricate writing between the two, always ensuring that they're supporting each other no matter how distant they get from each other in idea. It is honestly great Baroque writing. I mean, if you get rid of the rest of the instrumentation and you just have this here, I mean, transpose this to two strings and you have a string duet, a Baroque string duet. And what I think is really cool is when you listen to the music underneath, especially some of the rhythmic stuff, there was one part where the guitars kind of went to this dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 da. It's kind of having a little bit of rhythmic change to it. Still having a lot of 16th notes, but sometimes putting an 8th note in there for a little burst. You'll find that there's actually, between the harmonic and rhythmic ideas, they kind of play a very stereotypical accompanying part to the chord duet. And so I think if you put the two guitars on strings and then put the foundational stuff, the rhythm guitar ideas, onto a piano, transpose this, you'd actually have an incredibly solid and well-received Baroque piece. Maybe not one of the best ever, but I certainly think it's a lot closer to a classical song here than most people would give it credit for because of the metal aesthetic that it is all composed within. It's this is good stuff. This is what I'm trying to say. And I really enjoy that part of it. There are some places though where the extra guitars are gone and we just have vocals with drums and the rhythm guitars, and those parts don't work quite as well for me. But anytime the rest of the stuff came in, the choir, the clean vocals, the lead guitar lines, I was really enjoying myself. And I think for whatever reason, all of this works really well with the general atmosphere on this, which tends to lean towards reverence of some sort, a type of awe, of feeling small within something larger. That's what I felt in many places of this track. Let me hit some lyrics on this and see what's going on there. All right. Now, this track is not in English, but it's actually in a Norwegian dialect called Sognamal that's mostly spoken by those in Sogn og Fjordane. Probably mispronounced that terribly, but wanted to convey that information. A Martyrium, which I had to go and look up, is a tomb or a building for a martyr. And that's pretty much what this song is. It's an elegy for a martyr. It says, give him eternal rest, give him peace of mind, and remember his life with glory. Give him eternal rest, show him peace of mind, praise his glorious memory and his eternal life. 1,800 bodies drift in the fjord. The lukewarm blood shines under the hill, but one is carried through death. He is gone with the gods. So whatever this battle was, most of the people who died in it were not remembered as strongly as this one person who was a martyr for the cause. That's the entirety of the track, and maybe that's what the reverence is for. That's probably what the reference is for, right? Yeah, pretty straightforward track then. Not a lot of unique lyrics here and very straightforward in its message. I don't see really how it relates much to the black metal sound, but I've always found that to be less indicative of what lyrics are going to be about and more of a sonic choice divorced from the lyrical themes. Although sometimes the oppressiveness of the black metal does find a way to help support lyrical themes. I'm not seeing that here though. I find the Baroque elements to line up more with what the lyrics are aiming at. So these are my thoughts then on Martyrium from Windir. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on if I misspoke about something? What's your take or perspective or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.